On or off, whatever your preference is. Welcome, everybody. Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Hello, hello. In addition to that, if you need closed captioning, we do have that available. So you are welcome to access that if you need. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Okay. I was going to have some music playing, but I feel like we already have celebratory vibes, so we don't really need the music, but I'm gonna go ahead and get started as you all are joining in the group. Hello, welcome everybody. As I mentioned at the beginning, we will be recording, so thank you for joining us today. My name is Noelle Baldwin. I'm the Director of Diversity Relations and Advising here at IES Abroad, and I'm so excited to moderate this panel today for various reasons. One, because we are celebrating Black History Month, and even though it is coming to an end, we know that we will celebrate Black History 365 days a year. And so today in particular, though, we wanted to shine a spotlight on our IES alum who are trendsetters and trailblazers and making history in studying abroad. So we're so excited to have our panelists today. Welcome to those who are joining. Please feel free, make yourselves comfortable. This will be a fun conversation, and we'll definitely leave time at the end for questions and discussion with our amazing panelists. So without further ado, I know you guys didn't come here to listen to me, so I'm going to introduce our amazing panelists, and we're going to spotlight them so that way you can see their wonderful faces. First, I want to welcome Neal McKinney to the stage. He is an IES Barcelona alum. Neal, where are you? All right. And Neal, can you tell us a little bit about yourself as you come to the podium?
Yeah, no, thank you all so much for having me. It's a complete honor to be here. Neal McKinney, my pronouns are he, him, his. I am a doctoral candidate from The Ohio State University. I am hopefully going to be doing dissertation work within the next year, but I am a proud IES alum. I studied in Barcelona in 2007, which weirdly still feels like it was yesterday, even though it's obviously been such a long time away.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you, Neal. Next up, we have Sumaya El-Kashif, who studied abroad in Paris. Sumaya, come to the stage.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Noelle, and thank you to the IES team for putting this together. My name is Sumaya El-Kashif. I'm a senior international affairs, French double major, Arabic minor at Howard University. Graduating senior, I studied abroad in Paris, France with IES Paris French Studies. Just this fall, I came back in December. And I'm also a 2023 Charles B. Rangel Graduate Fellow that will be going on to grad school at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies in Bologna.
Woohoo! I love how you just lightly threw that in there. Thank you very much, Sumaya. We're going to be celebrating you all for the rest of this panel and for the rest of the year. So thank you for that. And our last panelist, last but not least, Michael Henry, who studied abroad at IES London.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Henry. I am a graduating senior political science major from Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I do currently study at Morehouse College. So I had the chance to study abroad in London for the spring of 2022 with IES Abroad London. So I'm very pretty involved here on campus. And I want to say after graduate, it's great to know that you are a Rangel Fellow because I'm actually a Pickering Fellow. I was awarded the Pickering Fellowship. So after I graduate from Morehouse College in May, I will actually be going to moving to Malibu, California in August to go to Pepperdine University, where I will be studying peace negotiation and conflict resolution. And upon my graduate studies at Pepperdine University, I will be going to the State Department to begin my career as a Foreign Service officer. So I'm really, really excited about what's next to come in life. Again, I'm so glad to be here.
So glad to have you. I mean, trendsetters and trailblazers. So I'm so excited to have each of our panelists here. Also, it just so happened that today is National Study Abroad Day. For those who did not know, so I see some of you shaking your heads. I'm so glad. So we actually planned it that way. It didn't just happened. But we are excited that we were able to host this event on National Study Abroad Day, which it just happened, a really great coincidence. But I want to jump right in because I have so many questions for these fellows, these authors, these PhD candidates. First and foremost, what made you want to study abroad? You know, I think we always, for a lot of folks, it's something that people take for granted that all students study abroad, but many of us know, coming from the communities we come from, it's not something that many of us may get a chance to do, an opportunity. So I just love to hear from each of you, what made you study abroad, and if inspired by somebody, who inspired you to study abroad?
Sure. Is there any order, or we just go?
Go, whoever wants to go
You can
first.
go ahead, Michael. I'll go after you.
Okay. Sure. So for me personally, I want to say what made me want to study abroad is I wanted to find out who I was. I wanted to find myself. And I felt like in order for me to do that, it required me to go somewhere far, far away where I knew nobody, where I didn't have any family at. And that's the reason what inspired me to study abroad, because I really, again, wanted to find out who I really was. And as a man of Morehouse, there are 5 wells that Morehouse instills in us, to be well-traveled, well-balanced, well-dressed, well-read, and well-spoken. I have all of those, but I said, well, how can I be well-traveled and say I want to be this global leader, but I haven't been outside the US yet? So I said it was very important for me to be able to go outside of the US. So I want to definitely say that wanting to find out who I was personally is the reason I wanted to why I studied abroad, and also to expand my horizon. And I know later on in the talk we'll get to what we gained personally, but I would definitely say that is what really inspired me to study abroad, because I wanted to find out who I was, and I knew that it was going to take a time and a few months for me to go somewhere and to do things on my own. With being in London, with being it was a culture shock. I was there 5 months, didn't know anybody. I had to figure out everything on my own. So I would definitely say that was the reason what helped me study abroad. I can definitely say that goal and mission has been accomplished.
That's so wonderful. So for me, I feel like a lot of us, when we're kind of in middle school, high school, we have this dream of like, oh my God, I want to go to this country or France or whatever. That's how it was for me. And my family's from Sudan, but growing up, like you said, there's a lot of socioeconomic disparities between Black communities and other communities in America in regards to accessibility to travel, obtaining a passport, etc. So I didn't really get those vacations that everyone got growing up. When I was 10, I went to Egypt with my family to visit one of our aunts there. But besides that, I always had this dream of like, I want to go, I started studying French in middle school in 6th grade, and I always wanted to go to France and to different countries. When I got to Howard, I was able to do a program. Well, it was kind of during COVID. It was complicated, but I was able to visit Morocco, and I went as a solo traveler, and it was the best experience ever. And I always knew that I wanted to study abroad in France because I've been studying French for 10 years plus. It's my double major. I've become fluent after all this time. And I just knew that I wanted to go have this amazing experience to refine my French skills, to see for myself the things I've been studying both in international affairs and in cross-cultural relations, specifically in seeing the Afro diaspora in France, which is something over the years of following them on social media and seeing the celebrities and the artists and the activists talk about so many different issues from cross-cultural lenses. I was just so excited to go see for myself what it would be like and make those connections. And it was a great experience. So that's what it was for me.
Amazing. I love that you both have had sort of this model placed in front of you to want to build and explore your boundaries outside of the US. Because for me, I'm first gen, and much of my knowledge about studying abroad was pretty non-existent when I started in college. I had opportunities to go a few places outside of the US through my parents and their love of travel, but the idea of spending a whole semester somewhere else was never something that truly crossed my mind, even though I did study Spanish from middle school onward and then went on to minor in it. I, attended DePaul University. I did not say that in my opening, but small liberal arts institution with a really strong history of study abroad. And so I was kind of sort of socialized into it because of my opportunities to see that, this is just something that within a college culture is afforded to other students. And even though it was not something that initially my parents were completely on board with, it was something that I am very grateful that I had the opportunity to pursue. I think really and truly, it was my friends sophomore year who were like, we're going to go abroad next year. And I'm just like, oh, well, I don't want to be left behind. So like, what do I need to do? So I ended up attending, study abroad fair and kind of sort of started the process that way. But yeah, it's definitely something that I appreciate being brought to me because again, historically, Black communities, we are often given very limited scopes of like what is made possible for us. And so again, just loving hearing that from both Samaya and Michael, just like being in spaces where it's like kind of sort of that expectation placed in front of you. That's amazing.
I agree with you, Neal. I love hearing each of your reflections because I think sometimes you're right. We can be in communities and we focus on the deficit, like all of the things and the barriers that prevent students from going abroad. But hearing Michael, Samaya, and Neal about the community of support around you all and those expectations that were placed on you and saying, well, this is a part of the experience. And I think especially students that are in the audience I hope that resonates with you all, that this is something that is attainable, that's possible, and that can be incredibly affordable, because I think sometimes finances can be a big barrier. Michael, I want to pivot and ask you a particular question because you are our first ever Merrill Scholar, and I think John Hodges is in the room. I see some of our notable alum who really made sure that scholarship fund was available, and you've talked very openly about your experience being a Merrill Scholar. Can you talk a little bit about this idea around finances being a barrier? Was it a barrier for you, or did you just see it as something that you just had to check off the list? I have to figure out how to do it because it's not going to stop me. So I'm just curious if you could share a little bit more about your experience in that regard.
Absolutely. And I have no shame to say that. And I say that because I come from very humble beginnings, but my beginnings the humble beginnings did not stop me from going far in life. It actually has allowed me to develop a spirit of dog grit and determination with everything that I do in my life. I can remember when I applied to study abroad, I was like, okay, I got in. I say, okay, I got in, but I was like, then the next thing that came on was finances. And as you all know, studying abroad is very expensive. I come from a single parent household. My mom is single. She's a single mother. It's 4 of us. So I've had to kind of, she's doing the best that she can. And I haven't really had a lot of support from any other people. But I was like, you know what? I have got to be able to study abroad. I'm going to find a way. So I did not give up. I kept going to the study abroad office over and over. I see, talking to our coordinators, like, look, this is something I want to do. I just need help, and I don't know where the finance is going to come from, but we have to make it happen. And especially, from being, from my background, money is definitely, it was a challenge. Especially talking about going overseas to study at another institution. It was very expensive, and I just did not know where in the world am I going to get $15,000 for the study abroad. I didn't know where that was going to happen. So the thing about me is that throughout my life, I've been very persistent with everything. I don't give up. Anybody who knows me, if you say no this time, I'm gonna go try to figure out how I can get a yes. And I've been throughout that my entire life, which is what I was able to award me this scholarship. Was because I just kept reaching out over and over. But I want to say this Merrill scholarship was like literally it was a blessing, and I don't even know how to say it besides that, but it was literally the biggest blessing to help me to get over there, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to study abroad. So definitely finances is are definitely it's a big factor, and especially like for me, people just say like, how do you do this? I'm the first in my family to do all of this stuff. My family doesn't even know what a foreign service officer is. I come from Fayetteville, North Carolina, a very small city, so all the stuff during this panel discussion is like, when I talk to Noel, this title right here, Trailblazing and Trendsetters, is literally perfect, because what I'm doing now, my family literally says, Michael, you are that trendsetter, you are that trailblazer for our family. I'm the first in my family to do any of this kind of stuff. So literally, like I had to make sure, because I want to show them that like we can do it. We are just as capable of doing it as any other people. We can do this. So I definitely want to say, that finances is definitely, it was a challenge, but again, I did not allow my background to stop me, because of my persistence and dedication. It was able to allow me to be the first recipient of the scholarship, and which is how I was able to study abroad.
Thank you so much, Michael. I usually snap when things just really resonate, so I'm just snapping. If anybody feels like they want to snap along, please feel free. Samaya, Neal, I want to give you a chance to respond to that prompt as well, this idea of barriers, or this idea of overcoming. I think sometimes we can talk about that, but how did it impact you, or what are some things that impacted your decision to go abroad?
Well, similar to Michael, I also come from a low income family of immigrants that came here from Sudan 40 years ago and having to restart, get better at learning English and get assimilated to the country. And that whole struggle, I'm also first generation. I have 4 other siblings, and I'm also the first one in my family to do this or that or go abroad and have the means to make it out and make it to all the dreams and things that my parents could never do, but that they dreamed and sacrificed for me to be able to do in this country. So it's really, it's such a major thing. Some people might be like, oh, you just went abroad, or for some folks who just have the means, it's just like another, quick trip. But for me and for Michael and for all of us here, I think is really life-changing, especially when you kind of feel like you came from nothing and earned your way to these spots. And on top of that, for me, I'm really grateful for the partnership that Howard University and our Ralph J. Bunche International Affairs Center has with IES and all these other programs, because with my Howard scholarship, one of the first things I learned from going to the Bunche Center and communicating with our study abroad advisor, Jamila Rashid, who's so wonderful, by the way, is that your Howard scholarship can transfer over to cover your study abroad expenses. So just by having this support community through Howard, through IES, through these partnerships, I never felt like I would be left alone. So even if there was a problem, they helped me solve it so quickly. Like I was supposed to study abroad last spring, because of COVID, I couldn't, and then it got postponed now, and then they helped me get the funds I needed to, the airplane ticket and all of this. So I feel like I was genuinely, truly supported by the best community, by all the IES staff. Even when I was going to switch a program at the last minute, they were super responsive and were really trying to help me out in my situation. And I'm just grateful that, if it wasn't for my Howard scholarship and the additional study abroad scholarship that I got from IES, I wouldn't have been able to go abroad. And the opportunity to even be at a university level and unlock these opportunities is just something I'm always grateful for, because I know that some folks, even if you work really hard based on where you are at what time and what you're exposed to or whatever, that your life can be totally different. And I don't think that any of us are here because we're simply better than other people in our community, or that we just worked harder and pulled ourselves up from the bootstraps. I definitely see it as a position we're in that we cannot take for granted, and that we are the trailblazers that really are showing people that, if we can do it, you can do it too. And if we were blessed enough with these positions to go abroad through IES and through Howard, through our institutions, then it was for a reason. And it's definitely something that I made the most of and never can take for granted. So the fact that I was able to go abroad, something I dreamed of doing and never been able to do really with my family, while attending Howard and through IES, was life-changing for me. I've always had this dream of being a diplomat, of working in international affairs, of living abroad and doing all these things that my parents told me that they could never do. So I'm just so grateful for the opportunity I had, and for how much IES really supported me through this, even to the last second, the last visa, the last days before I was able to go abroad. So.
Wow. Thank you. Wow, Samaya. Oh, that was great. Yes, I love hearing that. And as an alum, the old head, I guess, in the space, it's so great to know how much, things have changed over time. And I'll get to this in terms of the question potentially later about, what am I up to and how am I trying to blaze trails? But a lot of what was my experience was really just trying to figure it out. And I really, at the time, this wasn't something that was actively on my mind, but I learned that I was trying to embody so much this idea of why not me? Because, it wasn't modeled for me. It wasn't something that my family actively told me that I should do. However, when I started to learn about it, I'm just like, okay, so why not me? Like, why can't I do this? And being able to overcome every single objection of why this shouldn't be possible for me, and be able to say, like, okay, yeah, I hear you, but I still want to do it. So how do we make this happen? And so, I was very grateful that once I wore my family down to say, okay, fine, like, we'll let you do this. IES is so great to be able to help me sort of find ways just to be a part of that process, in terms of finding me a former student who had studied in Barcelona, a Black student specifically, so they could ask the real questions that they had about what the experience was, so that, when I was there, they felt really comfortable. And, IES also did a lot while on site for me to be able to find ways, like being able to have some sort of work study positions, just so that I had like just cash just to be able to eat and stuff like that. Because I personally, I had to take out loans. Unfortunately, my institution at the time didn't really like look at like the transition of scholarships in the same way. And I'm just going to be paying on these loans for a while, and it's fine because I would never have wanted to do anything different. The investment that I made in myself to have this experience was just so necessary for my growth that now I look back, like the ability for me to spend that time that I did in Barcelona to grow in the ways that I did, I can never put a price on that. And so I'm just so grateful financially to have found ways to make it possible, even though, of course, I wish I had, in hindsight, applied for more scholarships and whatnot. But just in general, just, being able to have that tenacity, having that resourcefulness to figure out a way to make it happen. And I'm so glad that I did.
Yeah, I so appreciate your comments, and I have so many questions to follow up. I'll start with this. You talked about why not me, and this idea of me and bringing yourself abroad and bringing your full self abroad. I'm curious, what aspect of your identity did you feel was most salient while you were abroad, or what aspect of your identity impacted your experience the most while you were abroad? Because we have a lot of these conversations around, identity, what it means to be Black in a particular country, what it means to be queer in a particular country. And I think all students, no matter what background, can identify with the idea that we all come with different facets of who we are. But I'm curious how you three panelists brought yourselves, your full selves, to these spaces. And if you couldn't bring your full self, why not? So maybe there were like 2 or 3 questions in there, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are around that. Neal, I'll start with you as our seasoned, not old, alum.
Thank you. Yeah, no, for me, I openly identify as Black and queer. And so being Black and queer abroad was something that I was really concerned about. And again, having IES's support of being able to have these conversations ahead of time really gave me comfort in knowing exactly what I could expect as far as navigating being in country. And when I was there, there's just a lot that I, at the time, just found my way through. Surprisingly, I was treated very well. Now, I didn't go into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to be discriminated against. But I found that, because I was really invested in trying to speak Spanish, and particularly, in the region, they speak Catalan, but generally they're very receptive to anyone who's actively trying to speak the language. And so, I brought myself into a space of gratitude of understanding that I am a visitor to this place and that I don't know what I don't know. And so, being able to really just be my full self in those spaces and trying to speak the language and making connections wherever I could, I found that that was really helpful for me to get over the initial uncertainty about how I would be treated. I definitely had a lot of interesting conversations with folks about sort of, my identity and whether or not I was actually, because I spoke Spanish, folks were then questioning. They didn't actually come to, oh, where are you from in the US? They were just like, wait, what country are you from? And it's like, well, I'm American. And so that was very interesting. And I do think that, nationality really did become more of the thing that was more of an interesting dynamic to deal with at the time, again, because I'm seasoned. George Bush was in office and there was a lot happening at that time as far as September 11th and everything that would come from that. And so there were a lot of questions that I got about being an American. And so it just helped shape my sense of connectivity to the world beyond the US in ways that I could have never imagined just by being open and willing to put myself out there. So I never felt the need to hide who I was. And even my host family, being able to have really frank and honest conversations about sexual orientation, and my host's mom being very supportive and basically saying, if my child grew up and told me, this is how they are, I would want to love and support them however they were. So it was just really great to have that be a conversation that I could have in Spanish, which at the time I would have never thought was possible. So it just, again, made me feel much more connected beyond just my previously lived experience.
Samaya, Michael?
Yes, I can follow that. Thank you for sharing that. I think we all have some very interesting perspectives to bring into this. For me, I think in regards to different countries, sometimes there can be different contexts of identity perception. And I genuinely think that I was terrified going abroad, period, especially as someone who studies international affairs, human rights, Afro-diasporic integration into the EU, et cetera, because I'd be studying all the things that would go wrong. So, you know, from my time in the Netherlands, I had done an internship there in the summer, and then going to France, I feel like having an ethnic background tied to a specific country can be much more of a dangerous experience when you're abroad, because here it's like, okay, you black, I'm black, we all black. Yeah. Not that there's no problems here, but you know, when I go abroad, I definitely face you have a lot more of that rhetoric that's very anti-migrant. Go back to your country, your parents aren't from, like, direct ties, very colonial types of triggers. This is the word I coined, can't even speak, colonial triggers. So kind of when I went abroad, I had some interesting moments. And France specifically is a very interesting society, because I feel like on the outside, Americans or just people outside of more EU can view all like the negative news headlines about France, which are true. But on the other side, there's so many positive things. And how I see France is not, you know, this white France led by President Macron. They go to the Eiffel Tower and they call it a day, liberté, égalité, fraternité. That white box classic. No, like, I don't even see Europe like that, because we live in a globalized world, a post-colonial globalized world that has evolved so much. And France specifically has one of the highest populations of migrant and Afro peoples. And for me, I think my Afro identity was definitely at the forefront. It's who I am. It's something I bring everywhere. So I tell them, yes, I'm Sudanese American. And yes, I'm going to use this phrase Afro-French, even though you guys, some people would react to me like, no one uses that. And I tell them, that's exactly why I'm using it. And it's complicated with France because the society is built on universalism. We all are the same. We have to be the same. This is how we protect equality and liberty. However, you know, coming from a racialized state such as the US, other racialized states such as Brazil, et cetera, that can be sometimes dangerous, because the problem with that is it kind of feeds into this idea of, it's very much colorblind racism, where we're all the same. We don't experience different things. How dare you say that you're queer and black? How dare you say you're black and French? How dare you say you're black, queer, trans, French? That's not okay. You're only French. And, you know, it's this whole discourse. So, of course, after studying French and these socio relations for a very long time, going to France, meeting people from across the diaspora, it brought up some very interesting conversations sometimes. But I found that through IES in my program, we had a very intersectional curriculum. I took a feminism course that was very intersectional, and I found people with my ideas who talk about all different types of perspectives and identities in France that are French or that are Afro-French. So I feel like I was able to build the support and kind of like the intellectual ammo I needed to be able to respond to people in that country that would look at me like, that's an Americanized idea. And someone that once told me basically in French, oh, those racialized ideas don't belong here, to my face on the metro. Someone I went to class with that I thought maybe was my friend. So I had some hard times, but I would say that in my experience, I found that the young people of France are very, very forward thinking. They're very conscious. They're very integrated, which sometimes I find to be different from the young folks of DC or in the US. And I just felt, you know, I felt like not other. So sometimes being abroad comes with these extreme highs and extreme lows, and it's about finding which place you feel best in. And I think the base of it is finding your community. So I found people of the Afro diaspora. I went to their Afro-French events and I felt at home and I felt supported and protected. And I think that anywhere I go, whether the Netherlands, whether France, UK, as long as I always find my Afro community, I feel based in it and I feel supported and not as alone. I feel like there's someone that understands me and that supports me if a certain situation does happen. So for me, it's, you know, being Sudanese, but also being shaped by my American identity. I learned to appreciate America more, less and more, but more in the sense that surprised me that, wow, it's my home. It's the only place I've ever known. Even though my parents came from abroad and I grew up with a total Sudanese identity, Black America shaped me and it's a part of who I am, you know? So I found it to be very beautiful. And I found myself, you know, sometimes defending things because Europeans and other peoples, it's easy to have this blank view of what an American is, but there's different Americas and there's different types of patriotism. And I learned that, and not all patriotism is make America great again patriotism, but it's the American, the patriotism that I think is real, genuine people that accept people from everywhere, that really do the work to make this country a place for everyone. So I kind of found this sense of new American pride and community while I was abroad. So all these things kind of developed for me as I was abroad, and I found so much appreciation, all the things that shaped my experience and who I am. And I definitely am grateful that my experiences at Howard and here really solidified my identity, because sometimes if you go to a more homogeneous or sometimes closed perspective or universalist country, you'll be very shaken if you're not stable in who you are. And you definitely don't want to let people get to you or really destroy your sense of confidence or your identity. I had a hard time sometimes, but the overwhelming majority of people I met were really supportive and told me, no, like, you don't have to have this whole negative opinion about this place or this now, because I promise you, like, that's the minority of people. You still have all these people that support you. So for me, it was all these things, my Afro identity being Sudanese, American, non-visibly, but Muslim also. I had all these things shape my experience, and yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Samaya. I've been writing down, taking notes. I just wanted, when you said Black America shaped me, I think it just makes me think about this idea of trendsetters, trailblazers, the alum that we have in the room, the trail that you blaze, planting those seeds for the next generation, it's a part of that culture that continues to shape all students and Black students in particular. So thank you for sharing that. Michael, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that question as well before we jump into the next one.
Sure. I just want to first start off by saying absolutely amazing to both of you. It's hard to come after that. Great responses. But I want to say, as you all know, that being Black in America comes with a lot of challenges, especially with being a Black man. When it wasn't many of us over there studying, when I was in London, it wasn't a lot of us over there. But as Samaya stated, I had to find that support group. Support is everything, and support means like you have to have support. It cannot be done alone, especially when you're going to another country where you don't know anybody at. So that's what kept me. But I want to say that the thing that really kept me in all the places I went to is my authenticity. Although I went over to going overseas to find out who I was, one thing that I did know was that I'm authentic, and I don't care where I'm going. I won't change for anybody. I'm going to continue to be myself. And that's what kept me over there. Because when I was in Europe, I had the chance to go to France, Italy, Portugal, the Netherlands, and Greece. And during my travels over there, it was everywhere I went, it was different people. But again, I did not change who I was. I understand that, I'm from America. Understand that, there are certain things that I cannot do over there. But because I knew who I was deep down inside, that's really what helped me to be able to get through over there and to make it through, and really just that support. I continue to know, like I said, when I was in London, I found that group. We went places together. And I interacted with all kinds of people, and that's one thing about it allowed me to get a greater sense of cultural awareness. But you have to have a safe space, and I feel like being able to talk to people who look like me, who talk like me, when able to relate, where we can just come back together and just share some of the things, because again, it's not easy. There are a lot of challenges, especially with being in a place like that. And my family's over here, and people over here like 4,000 miles away, and I'm over here in this other country. And so I'm like, I can't always, rely on them. So that's why I said I have to get the support route while I'm here. So that's why I now established that. And just because of who I am, and just because who I am as a person, is what kept me during my 5 months of studying abroad.
I'm making sure I keep the time, keep my eye on the time, because I want to leave time for questions. This next question, I want to ask each of you, and we got a little taste of it in your bios. How are you blazing a trail for the next generation? Michael and Samaya, you studied abroad during this pandemic experience. Neal, you're in a PhD program. I would love to just spotlight, what are you doing to blaze the trail for the next generation of Black study abroad students and study abroad students in general? So Neal, I'll kick it to you first. You're right here.
All right, thank you so much. I have had a lot of time to think about this as a doctoral student, because my focus is specifically on trying to blaze the trail for making sure that Black and Brown students, whomever or wherever they come from, if they come to college, that they can be successful through study abroad. There is research that shows that study abroad has a great impact on the completion rates for these students. And my previous work prior to my PhD, I did do some work in education abroad, working for my alma mater, DePauw, for study abroad. And in that experience, I became a strong champion for Black and Brown students to pursue education abroad. And what I realized starting my PhD program, which is that not everybody that I worked around, seemingly not necessarily at DePauw in the office, but just in general, the whole landscape of higher education, that though we want to see ourselves succeed, that there are people who are unfortunately not on board with seeing Black and Brown students be successful. And so for me, my research has taken me in this direction of wanting to study the role of race and racism and study abroad advising practices, because, you know, Michael and Samaya have wonderful experiences at HBCUs, but, you know, a lot of students are at historically white institutions, wherein that experience where the Black and Brown students walk into a study abroad office, oftentimes they are met with that deficit that Noel, you kind of brought up. And my interest is trying to dismantle that by taking a stronger look at how the advisors themselves orient their biases around race and racism, and how does it actually show up in the more larger stories and narratives that the education abroad field tells about who can and cannot go abroad. And so my interest has taken me to do some publications so far to be able to write about how do you actively focus and succeed, or focus on the success of Black and Brown students as far as their cultural wealth. There's lots of research that shows about if you move away from focusing just on social capital, if you look at other cultural capital, such as, you know, Samaya talked about coming from Sudanese families. So already having like this immigrant family background and understanding of what it means to have to work so hard to be successful, going abroad is very much translating that sort of similar experience. And then Michael, knowing just how much his experience is trying to trailblaze for others that look like him, being able to have that aspirational capital are things that students can absolutely utilize while they're abroad, but the field doesn't necessarily push that as much. So I had an opportunity to write about some of the ways that I try to center Black and Brown students' cultural capital in a publication called A House Where All Belong. That was published just last year. And then just last month, well, actually this month, it's still February. So I had an opportunity to also reflect on some of my forthcoming research in a pilot study that I did through an internship with the Forum for Education Abroad, whose sole purpose is really focusing on putting out best practices around education abroad and being able to establish that there is incongruence in the beliefs broadly about how study abroad is a beneficial practice for students of color, yet when talking about the specific challenges that study abroad advisors often come across, that they're very specifically pointing out deficit-based thinking. And so if we're talking about wanting to support all students, yet you bring in a deficit-based mindset, those things are incongruent to the larger values of being able to realize equity in our field. And so my way that I'm trying to trailblaze for the future is generations is to actively study these narratives through the lens of critical race theory in order to adequately pinpoint these are the conversations that are happening, and this is how it's based in race and racism, and this is what we need to be able to push back on in order for us to be able to fully realize equity, so that students like Samaya and Michael, like literally anytime, the first time that they walk onto the campus, they're just like, this is for me. Like, I know, like, without a doubt, I can do this. I shouldn't have an issue with being able to study abroad. So I'm really excited about this research, as y'all probably can tell. I'm really, really excited to bring it forward to the field and beyond into other higher education spaces, just because, again, it's, you know, the work towards equity really does require us as practitioners to really look at ourselves. And until we really do that, we can't really fully realize the work of equity. So I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Neal, and thank you for dropping these publications. Quinn, please feel free to check that out. Michael, Samaya, how are you each individually blazing your trail? And I see the chat is buzzing, so I know there'll be questions. But Michael, Samaya, how are each of you blazing your trail?
Yeah, sure. I can go. So in the many roles here at Morehouse College, I serve as a study abroad ambassador for the Andrew Young Center for Global Leadership. As you all know, Morehouse is an HBCU. It's an all-male institution. So basically, on campus, I talk to different students as my role as study abroad ambassador about studying abroad, promoting them. And the first thing that they say is, well, finances, the first thing that come out their mouth. But as a product of IES Abroad, I come to let them know that if I can do it, you can do it too. And I say that every time. I say, look, I am we all the same. We all look alike. We all dress alike. We all come from very similar backgrounds. Because again, that's the first thing that I hear is people say, finances, I just can't do it. My family can't support me. How am I going to be able to get there? So in my role in being a study abroad ambassador, I say, look, you can do it. Listen, if I can do it, you can do it too. And I don't come from no different background than you. I didn't come from the best background. And going abroad, I didn't really have much family support in terms of finances of doing it. So if it wasn't again for IES Abroad, I wouldn't be able to go over there. So the way that I am being a trailblazer is by, literally, by spreading the word, passing it on. And I really believe in you have to pass it forward. If somebody helped you, you got to help them. So that's what I do in my role here at Morehouse with being an ambassador. I'm constantly going on campus, say, hey, look, guys, here's an opportunity. Come here, come to the office. I have office hours to study abroad. Come see me. We can talk, go over this. And I will literally help you find like scholarships. I will help you. We can sit down. I don't care how long it takes. We can meet every week, everything like that. We can do that because I really believe that they need more of us to study abroad. And I want to change this narrative of it's too expensive. We can't do it. I won't be able to go over here. I really want to go study abroad, but the money is just is stopping me. So again, in my closing, I came to tell them, as a product of IES Abroad, we gonna get you there. They got me there from the very end, just like Samaya said, literally to the very end. IES Abroad stuck with me. They did not leave me. They helped me until even when I was over there. They were still checking on me. And even when I got back, we were still in conversation because that's how much they supported me and that's how much they wanted to see me succeed. And especially as a Black young man who has great aspirations, who wanted to do this, but just did not know how he was going to do it because of money. So that's the way that I'm being a trailblazer, is by, again, passing it forward and just making myself very accessible and available to the students here on Morehouse College's campus.
Thank you so much, Michael. You definitely are blazing a trail. We were at Howard, my colleague Robin Pipkin and I, we were on campus, and he is Mr. Morehouse. So you're definitely sharing the news, and we appreciate everything that you do. Samaya, how are you blazing your trail?
Oh my goodness, following two really amazing people, Michael and Neal, on the academic research and the facilitating that amazing work. I'm really excited for the work that you both are doing. And me, of course, also still on the student side. I'm also a study abroad ambassador for our Ralph J. Bunch International Affairs and Study Abroad Center. I also volunteer with our student volunteer group, the Bunch Brigade. So along with helping people find their way through study abroad in the process, and being the social media correspondent through IES and using the hashtags. And, everyone asks me all the time, like, oh my goodness, wait, aren't you that girl that just travels a lot? They're like, how? And I'm like, come and bring your friends and bring your mama's friends and bring your sister's friends and the dog's friends, bring them all, okay? Because I get so excited sharing this with everyone because, through IES and through so many programs, there's scholarships, there's different opportunities, and it's always the lack of knowledge. It's always that, like you were saying, the deficit thinking, like, why I can't do it. So I try to as openly and honestly share my story because, like you said, a lot of our backgrounds are the same. It's not like my family or your family are rich or anything. Like we really struggled to get up there through every single piece. And even though we go to HBCUs, what we do see, Neal, is also, most people still think that I can't afford that. No. And so what we're trying to do through IES and also through the Bunch Center at Howard and through our HBCUs and other institutions is to bridge this gap of knowledge and accessibility. At Howard, we also do once or twice a year passport drives in which we help at least 100 students get free passports, which makes a difference. It definitely makes a difference for me. So, it's expensive getting the ride to go to the post office to do this and that. These are all barriers for a lot of us. Besides this, I also mentor incoming international students through our organization, Howard University International Pals. So we put on a lot of different cross-cultural events to share and bridge together different communities at Howard and people in the region. So I mentor those incoming students and I aid with the Bunch Center events. And besides this, what I'm doing next in my work is I hope to focus in human rights and continue to do my master's in international affairs with a focus in culture, politics, and human rights. So I hope to continue this, begin my career as a foreign service officer, and then later on be based abroad and try to just show people like us that, you know, if I can do it, you can do it. We can do it, and that we are meant to be in these places and spaces. After all of my experiences in the sport I've had going abroad and different things, I'm able to walk into every room and be like, yes, I'm meant to be here. I'm here. And no matter what any of you guys think, I'm meant to be here. And I'm not less important than you. I don't deserve it less because I'm not rich like you are, you know, like that. I'm rich in knowledge. I'm rich in what I can bring. The finances, you know, that doesn't make you who you are. It's what you actually bring as a person. So I love so much mentoring any students, my younger students at Howard, the Bunch Center events, studying abroad, mentoring people as a Wrangell Fellow, and etc. So this is my step of trailblazing, this advocacy, and I hope to do this on an international scale, showing people of the Afro diaspora and all of our communities that all of this is meant for us. And in fact, I mean, it was our societies, civilizations, and peoples that really built the riches of this world. So if anything, we're just taking back what we really deserve and what we really earn and what we really built. So sometimes I'd be having some Black folks coming to be like, France, are you going to France? Aren't they like racist? I'm like, Madame, listen, okay, there's more than one lens on things, okay? Just because there's this, like I said, France is not Macron, and you eat macaroons and baguettes and it's white people call it a day. When I see France, I see the Afro-French culture. I see the music. I see everything that they bring that makes it what it is. I see that Senegalese restaurant in the 19th arrondissement. That's how I see France. And I think that that's how people need to get updated to this globalized view of Europe and what these different countries are, not just, you know, this kind of Western produced idea of this is what it is. This is who's meant to be here. And if you're not in that box, you can't come. No, what we're doing is we're breaking into every space that we want to and showing people that they can do it too, because we all belong. And I honestly, genuinely have met some of the best people ever outside of the Black community that have all the same ideas, are extremely conscious, and that have the same mission. So really, it's about what's in here. You know, Black Skin, White Mask by France Fanon. That's all I have to say on that.
My cheeks hurt from smiling so much. I think you can see why these panelists were selected. The advocacy. I just want to also just highlight the fact that each of you in your own way are not only blazing trails on your campuses by talking to other students, in your career paths, the research you've chosen, as future diplomats, as leaders of the world. We thank you for the work that you're going to continue to do, and not just within the organization IES. Of course, we're very proud of you and proud to say that you're our alum, but within the field and as human beings, I'm just proud to hear and listen to you, because hearing you, those are the stories I share with my students, I share with my cousins, I share with my community about why study abroad is so impactful, you know, how it's impacted me, etc. So I just thank you for sharing your time and being so generous in sharing your stories. I'm conscious of the time. Does anybody have questions? I know the chat was really active, but if you have questions or perhaps a comment that you'd like to share with the panelists, please feel free to unmute yourself. Okay. Yes, I think it says your name is Jody Madler, but I don't think you're Jody.
You're absolutely right. I'm Ed Wheeler, and Neal, I make you look like you're 22 years old. I studied in Vienna in 1967, 66, and 67. I really cannot fully express how proud I am. I'm so glad I was able to get on. Jody and John Hodges had told me about the panel discussion today. There's so much I want to say, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, but first of all, I was a poor kid. I had wonderful parents, but my dad sold fruit and vegetables from the back of a pickup truck. My mother had been a domestic worker. My dad had to be convinced that I was going overseas, not because of the money necessarily, but because there was nobody in my family that had ever gone to college and nobody had ever graduated. And at the time I went, it meant delaying graduation by a year. And my dad wanted to live to see me graduate. And so my mother, in one of them nighttime conversations that I was not supposed to hear, but we lived in we had one bathroom, and I heard as much of the conversation as I could hear. My mother convinced him that the only people in my family that had ever gone overseas were people that had uniforms and guns. And my mother convinced him that this was a rare opportunity. It changed, Samaya, it changed my life also. Michael, it changed my life. Neal, it changed mine. I have gone on to get a PhD. I've been president of 2 graduate theological schools. I've been dean of Tuskegee University's chapel. I've been blessed. But it was my year overseas that opened up opportunities. It gave me a chance to see the world. It was the first time, my second time on an airplane was from New York to London. I remember my first embarrassing moment. I had never seen salt on the table in a little dish. I thought it was sugar. And so I put it on my cereal rather generously. And I was too doggone embarrassed not to eat all of it with all that salt on it. That was the last time I put sugar on my cereal. But my life has been blessed by this. But I want each of you to know I've been blessed by this conversation. The world is going to be a better place because of the 3 of you. The world is going to be a better place because a Black queer man knows who he is and is proud of that. But dares to step out. That a brilliant young lady from Howard University with a Sudanese background understands who she is, articulates that clearly with power, and loves who she is. And a Michael Henry, who I've had the privilege to talk to on more than one occasion, who's a Morehouse man. I know he's a man of Morehouse until he technically graduated, but he's a Morehouse man now. And he stands tall and proud. John Hodges and I were scared to death about him going to Pepperdine because we were not sure that it had the right program. But he has convinced us it is the right program for him. You are trailblazers. You are making new paths. And I couldn't be prouder. At my age, if the Lord lets me live to see June 4th, I'll be 77. I hope I've got still some gas in the tank, but I know that I've got more in the rearview mirror than I got in the windshield. But I'm real proud to see folks like you coming on, because I know that the future is bright because of people like you. May God continue to bless and keep you. May Allah watch over you, Samaya. And may your trailblazing continue so that the world will begin to change in ways that will make it better for those that come behind you. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we should just end it there. I tried not to cry, y'all. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just feel so full to listen to your words. I'm going to look in the comments because I want to make sure I respect anybody's question that was dropped in there. Literally, Laurel, mic drop. Like, that's it. That's it. I do see a question. I know we have about 6 or so minutes, and maybe we can just throw this out. I see Melanie Smith asked a really good question. And maybe this can kick off another panel at another time. You're right. If there is one thing your campus advisor could have told you that they did not, what do you wish they would have told you? And I'll get myself together.
I responded in the chat just around the idea of really thinking very thoughtfully. I was very I'm so glad that I went to Barcelona, and I would not have changed it. I would have changed just some of my thought process about what is most important about my experience abroad. Because I chose it because I needed a specific credit. And I'm so thankful that what I gained in beyond just that course that I needed to take was so much more than I could have imagined. But I'll go back to this idea of dreaming. Like, it's just, being able to see ourselves in spaces and places where we don't think that we could ever be can only happen when people believe in our capacity to do more than what we have been shown to have as a part of our lives. And so, I've had the fortune to now have traveled to other places like Australia and New Zealand, and still have places like the continent of Africa and East Asia that I really want to see. And, I don't know if that at that time I really would have listened, but just the idea of just being able to imagine myself in these places beyond just sort of what was comfortable. Like, all of us have gone to Europe, and that's wonderful, but there are all these other places in the world where we could also have these beautiful opportunities to connect and learn about ourselves. And so that's just the one thing that I would really have loved to have had in my own experience.
Michael, Samaya?
I feel like Ms. Rashid at Howard University did a fantastic job. So even as I try to think of something, I really feel like she set me up for utmost success. At that point, it was just, pushing the child off the swing, pretty much. So, I mean, the positive is she told me everything I needed to know about going abroad, credits transferring, all the logistics. One thing I learned from going abroad through IES is that even though I needed help, we had international insurance. I got therapy while I was abroad it's not like I particularly asked them to help me, but they were like, okay, we're going to get you the support you need, and we're going to do this and this. And that was amazing. So I just want to highlight one positive thing through IES that perhaps I didn't think about before. But one thing I did learn is mental health while abroad is really important. So making sure to share like those resources before is a really essential thing for all of us, I think, especially navigating as an Afro person abroad.
Yeah, and just a second that first I want to say, I'm having to over here fight back tears as well. This conversation has just been very moving. I didn't expect to come in here to cry, so no, but I'm just saying, but no, this really has been very moving, just from everybody and just hearing everybody talking. But my answer is very similar to Samaya, about my advisor here at Morehouse. She pretty much, set me up for everything. It's kind of hard to pick up one thing, but if there was one thing I would say, it's probably like Samaya said, more mental health resources, because mental health is a real thing. It really is a real thing, especially when you're being in a foreign place. And you I know there were some days when I was in London, I was like, you know what, I like it here, but then some days I just go in my room and just be like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it. But as time went on, I got more and more cultural adapt to the place, and I just began to love it even the more. So I would definitely say just, providing more and more mental health resources. Not saying that they did not do that, but just, as always, you can always provide more and more. So I would definitely say that, because again, mental health, it's a real thing.
Well, I just want to take the time to thank each of our panelists for answering these questions, sharing their stories. Thank you for all of the attendees. This has been recorded, so we'll be sure to share it out and hopefully use this conversation to continue to blaze trails and support the next generation of students. I want to give a big shout out to my team, Quinn, Ruby, Brittany, Ashley, Shayna. Thank you for your support. I see Greg is here, our CEO of IES Abroad. We really just want to thank you for being in this space with us, and happy Black History Month. But as we know, we're not just celebrating for the month, we celebrate 365. So we look forward to having another event and other events like this. Have a wonderful Monday and a great week. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.